everyone, welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. In today's news analysis, that is news analysis of 27th May 2024, we'll be taking 5 important articles of Hindu and Indian Express as always, and we'll be trying to understand it in detail from both prelims as well as mains point of view. So if we talk about the first article, which is on Hindu page number 6, here we'll be talking about PM Janman scheme. What are the good things associated with it? What are the limitations which is impacting the performance of PM Janman scheme? We'll be talking about that in detail. Moving on to the second article, which is on Indian Express page number 15, here we'll be talking about patent process. Again, there are certain issues which is impacting Indian Patent Office. What is Indian Patent Office? Which ministry it comes under? And then the more important part, what is the difference between patent, GI tag, when we are talking about copyright? What are these terms? How we will be differentiating between them? That's we'll be talking about in that particular article as well. Moving on to the third article, which is on Indian Express page number 12. Here we'll be talking about LVM3 commercialization. India's most powerful rocket has been designed, and that will give us an excuse rather to talk about PSLV as well as GSLV. What is the difference between PSLV and GSLV? Moving on to the fourth article, which is on Hindu page number 10. Here we'll be talking about India's trade deficit issue. India is currently having trade deficit with 9 of the top 10 trading partners. Why is it happening? What are its implications? And then we'll try to understand BOP, balance of payment, current account deficit versus capital account surplus, right? Moving on to the last article, which is on Indian Express page number 11. Here we'll be talking about Russia-China relationship and how that relationship is going to shape India's future. And India should be mindful of it and what should be India's future course of action. So all these things we'll be discussing it in the last article. Apart from these 5 articles, at the end, we'll be also solving practice questions because then only things will be getting etched in your mind. If we talk about the first article of the day, that is talking about a door to a housing scheme, but don't go by the name per se. This particular article deals with PVTG. What is PVTG? Particularly vulnerable tribal group, and UPSC has already asked question on it, which we will see. So there are different kind of questions which can be asked on PVTG. Which particular state has maximum number of PVTG, that is particularly vulnerable tribal group? The answer is Odisha. Here we are concerned more with a specific scheme related to PVTG. And what is that scheme? That is PM Janman housing scheme. So again, here as we keep on talking about, we focus on the specific areas where UPSC can ask questions. So even in this particular scheme, we'll try to see what areas UPSC can ask question on. So if we talk about particularly vulnerable tribal groups, see, in UPSC 2019 only, they have asked a question here. Like PVTG resides in 18 states. There are 95 PVTG. That statement is actually wrong. So even if you had known this particular thing, and in this particular article as well, it has started with 75 PVTG. So even if you had known this particular statement, right, that there are only 75 PVTG, not 95, and if we had eliminated third option, see what is happening here. We are directly coming to C, 1, 2, and 4. This is known as option elimination, and which we keep on talking about, that don't forget option elimination. It will help you in more ways than one, right? So now let's move on to the context. What is the context of this article? First of all, we have just seen, since we have seen a PYQ now, so we know that this particular first statement is very important for us. 75 PVTG, and then we have done some additional information like hogging as well, right? That Odisha has maximum number of PVTG. Cool. So here we are talking about that there are so many issues which impact this particularly vulnerable tribal groups. In general, tribal people face so many issues. And even in this tribal group, there exists certain strata of tribal people who are categorized as PVTG who are facing so many issues. So here we are trying to talk about what government is doing to address those issues. So government has launched Pradhan Mantri PVTG Development Mission in 23-24. But the mission we are concerned about in this particular article is PM Janman. Now, what is important from exam perspective? What is the full form of Janman? Janjati Adivasi Nyay Maha Abhiyan. So please remember this. Sometimes they can ask you the full form. Second thing which is important in this particular slide is, when was it launched? Launch month as well as year. 2023 November month. So do remember it. Then PM Janman scheme, they're talking about essential services. They can sometimes ask you that PM Janman scheme is only focusing on housing, only focusing on sanitation. So you have to be aware that there are different dimensions here. Safe housing, clean drinking water, as well as sanitation, right? And now how much money they are giving? 2.3 2.39 lakh per household in 3 installments. So sometimes you have to remember these factual data. Earlier, what used to happen 7 or 8 years back, UPSC did not ask too many factual information, but now they are going into that particular territory or domain. So you need to be aware that 2.39 lakh per household in 3 installment it will be given. Fine. So if we talk about the challenges associated with PM Janman scheme, so process of data collection and registration in DBT schemes like PM Janman is fraught with challenges. And what are the challenges here? Data mismatch. Sometimes, and this we have heard in different scheme also. Like we have an Aadhaar card, the names are not matching. Sometimes the fingerprint or scanner does not like take the actual, like we have some different fingerprints and so many things, so many kind of different issues, biometric issues. Aavas Plus mobile app is used for registering PVTG households for the housing scheme. Again, here there is a point which you need to remember from pre-perspective. Which mobile app is used for registering PVTG households? The answer is Aavas Plus mobile app. Great. Then what are the things here? Discrepancy is happening in the village list between the app and the Manrega record. Now here, what is Manrega? Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. And what is it? It is right to work which is provided in rural areas. This is not right to work in urban areas, right to work in rural areas. So again, from this particular slide, we are also knowing something about Manrega, but it's not like you have done BTech and you will go there and you will like give me some technical job. No, you have to be willing to do some, what do you say, non-skilled manual work for 100 days. Then only you will be enrolled in Manrega. So local challenges like there can be people, there can be officials who are non-PVTGs who may not be very sensitive to the PVTG people. So these are some different challenges which this particular scheme is facing. So what is the way forward? So you can streamline the registration process. Now here understand one thing, and this is applicable for other schemes as well. And this is actually like a cheat code for you people. Whenever there is a way forward or they ask you the solution per se, you just have to write the solution of the challenges. Like what was the challenges? Like there were issues in DBT schemes. There were issues in like deletion or mismatching of beneficiaries. There were issues in non-PVTG people not very sensitive about the grievances of PVTG people. Just write the solution that we need more sensitivity awareness programs. So just write the solution of all the challenges. Update the mobile app, enhance community engagement through Gram Sabha. So PVTG people, they have faced a lot of issues and from a long period of time. So this PM Janman scheme, if it becomes successful, it will be a step forward in addressing these long-standing issues. So PVTG people, they have faced lots of issues from time immemorial, and the success of PM Janman would play a crucial role or would be a great step forward in addressing some of these long-standing issues. If we talk about the second article of the day, that is about patent process. This particular article is talking about different things like Indian Patent Office, IPO. So they are facing some issues. Now, what are the things which are important from exam perspective? IPO comes under which ministry? Ministry of Commerce. So this is actually important from exam perspective. What else is important? So here we are talking about patent per se, but there are different terms which we need to know. What is patent? What is copyright? What is trademark? What is GI tag? What is trade secret? All these terms, you should know the basic difference. And if you are able to understand this after this particular article is done, then this particular lecture is successful for you, right? So let's talk about this particular issue and let's see the PYQ. So you can see Indian Patent Law 1917, UPSC has asked a question in 2013 regarding this Novartis patent application. Now you will understand more about Novartis, more about A.R. Rahman, which will come under patent, which will come under copyright once we are done with this particular article. Okay, so what is the context? Delhi High Court is not very happy with Indian Patent Office because they have rejected a detergent patent application from P&G. Procter & Gamble. So generally what happens, they have sent a notice, this Indian Patent Office, 2 days back, if I'm not wrong, they sent a notice to P&G that we are facing some issues and we cannot give you patent or something and you have to reply. So generally the reply has to be done in a 6-month period. But 2 days after only, they just rejected the application and that was the grievance of P&G, that how can you reject it within 2 days when we can resolve the issue in 6-month period. And that's why Delhi High Court was not very happy with Indian Patent Office. Now again, you don't need to go into the nitty-gritty of every issue. What we have to understand is we are reading it from UPSC perspective. So what is important here? IPO. It works under or it comes under the ambit of which act? Indian Patent Act 1917, which was amended in 2005. Great. Then it comes under which ministry? We have just discussed it. Ministry of Commerce. Great. Then it is compliant to TRIPS. Now here, this is a point which is important from exam perspective. TRIPS. it comes under which organization? What is the full form of TRIPS? Trade-related aspects of intellectual property right. Intellectual property right is explicitly given in our GS3 syllabus. So that's why it becomes very important from exam perspective, right? So TRIPS, trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, it keeps on coming, and there are so many different terms which are related to TRIPS, which we'll talk about in subsequent, means articles which will be coming in the subsequent news, which we'll be covering in different days, right? Here the focus is, we'll try to understand, we'll go there, that what is the difference between patent, trademark and all these things. So global comparison, what is happening? India is lagging behind when we are talking about patent application per se. US and China, they're doing much better. And not only this, if you see certain things related to patent application, inventions per se, you will see a country like Israel, which is so small. They have so many Nobel laureates, so many inventions. India is lagging behind in so many different aspects, and we are trying to understand why. So average delay of 58 months is there in India when we are processing any patent application as compared to much shorter time in China and US. So we can do much better in this regard. We have a lot to improve in this regard. Great. So now what are the different things? Again, when you're talking or when you're studying from UPSC perspective, it's not just about the negative things. You always need to have a balanced attitude, the positive as well as the negative point. So what are the positive aspects? Like negative things we have just discussed, why Delhi High Court was not very happy with IPO. Silver lining is, even though we are facing these many issues, still there is an increase in patent filing. 44.6% growth in international patent filing in 2023 compared to 2022. So that means things are looking at the brighter side, or things are improving per se, but still we have a long way to go. Way forward is Economic Advisory Council to PM. They are saying that we can automate some process, because wherever humans are involved, there is a chance of corruption, there is a chance of so many different things happening. According to second ARC also, collusive corruption, coercive corruption, we have different kind of corruptions, which we have, I think, discussed in the previous DNA videos as well. That coercive corruption, when somebody is forcing you to pay a bribe. Collusive corruption, when 2 people, 3 people, more than that, they're coming together to serve their purpose. So according to second ARC, after 1991 LPG reforms, this collusive corruption has increased. And when people are involved, corruption can increase. But if you automate the process, things will become much more faster, and the corruption will decrease to a certain extent. And the example of this is e-governance, which is again there in GS paper 2. What is e-governance? Use of ICT tools to deliver government services. Great. So now the main core part of this particular article, what is patent, what is copyright, what is trademark, and we'll try to take some example and try to understand these terms. So patent, protect invention and processes. This will not make things clearer. You have to understand with examples. So let's say we are talking about Novartis. There was a UPSC question related to Novartis. So Novartis is a drug making company. They make medicines per se, and in medicine, the raw material of medicine is known as API. Active pharmaceutical ingredients. They generally change the API and they file for patents. So this is about inventions. So Novartis medicine, you can put it in the criteria of patents. Hope you're understanding this. Medicines, inventions. Copyright, A.R. Rahman. He wrote a song, let's say, Roshni Se Bhare Bhare. That song was not written by A.R. Rahman. So any different song like Dil Se, any song you take of A.R. Rahman. So he will get a copyright. And this is his original work. He or she who is writing a book, who is writing or composing music. So copyright is associated with that. Geographical indication. So Darjeeling tea, any particular thing of a particular place which is known for its uniqueness, then you will get GI tag. Hope you're understanding this. Trademark, you have Parle-G. Parle-G has a unique symbol or logo. Similarly, different companies, Britannia, they have their own logo. This is trademark. Trade secret, Coca-Cola. Very few people in the world know the secret of Coca-Cola, which ingredient is used. So that is trade secret. Hope you're understanding. Patent, medicine, just keep in mind. Copyright, music, books, keep in mind. Geographical indication, uniqueness of a particular product related to a particular area. Trademark, symbol of companies, and trade secret, Coca-Cola. So when you're taking these examples, things become much more easier. So the world's most tightly guarded trade secret, that is of Coca-Cola or Coke. If we talk about the third article of the day, it is related to GS3 Science and Tech, right? And it is related to ISRO. So even in Science and Tech, GS3, you have different dimensions, like you have health, you have medicine, you have space. So here we are going into the fora of space, ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, and we are talking about LVM-3. As you can see in this particular image, LVM-3 is ISRO's most powerful rocket so far. And this is a type of GSLV rocket rather. So what is the difference between PSLV and GSLV? We have to talk about these things and we will be talking about it. So now if you see in 2013, UPSC has asked a question on these launch vehicle like PSLV, Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, GSLV, Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle. So PSLV and GSLV. This is the core area of this particular article which we are focusing on. So as you can see, questions have been asked on PSLV and GSLV, and we have to be ready for all eventualities. So let's come to the context of this third article. Indian Space Agency, ISRO, they are commercializing space technology, and there is a commercial wing of ISRO as well, which we'll be talking about. And they are telling private sector to come under the ambit of space and to invest here for the manufacturing of LVM-3. Do remember, sometimes they can give you this question that LVM-3 is PSLV or GSLV. It is GSLV. And out of PSLV and GSLV, which can carry higher payload, the answer is GSLV. And there are different technicalities, so you don't need to go too much into the technicalities, but we'll try to understand some key terms. So why this thing is in news? So ISRO's commercial arm, understand from the pre-perspective. They can ask you that what is the name of ISRO's commercial arm, or ISRO's commercial arm is known as NSIL, New Space India Limited. That is actually correct. So they are taking this manufacturing of LVM-3, which was earlier known as GSLV Mark III. So LVM-3, they can even give you this particular statement that LVM-3 was previously known as PSLV Mark III, which will be wrong actually, because it was not PSLV Mark III, it was GSLV Mark III. So pay attention to these small things, as we say, choti magar moti baatein. So about the launch of Mark III, LVM-3 or GSLV Mark III, both are same. So it's a new satellite, or this is one of the most powerful rocket, if not the most powerful rocket designed by ISRO. And this is a 3-stage launch vehicle. Do understand it. So earlier PSLV was there, solid, liquid, that was the propellants, propellant means the fuel which will carry this rocket to space. So here it is a 3-stage launch vehicle. So you have solid, liquid, and then cryogenic. What is cryogenic? Engine or which will be working at very low temperature. That is cryogenic. So solid, liquid, cryogenic. Earlier in PSLV we had solid, liquid. Those were the propellants. So we are understanding it. So it's a 3-stage launch vehicle, unlike PSLV, which was a 4-stage launch vehicle, solid, liquid, and it is 3-stage. Solid, liquid, cryogenic. Now, what is the significance? What we are trying to do via this particular initiative, we are trying to reduce our dependence on other countries. Like earlier, we were too much dependent on Russia. Russia is anyway a all-weather friend of ours, right? But even then, we have to reduce the dependence, because our Honorable PM Sir, he keeps on talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, and we have to be self-reliant. So we are focusing on complete indigenization of cryogenic technology, and this will help us in our future initiative as well. We want to send Indian people to space, mission Gaganyaan. And if we are having powerful rockets, it will help us in attaining that aim in a quicker time period. Then we'll be launching like Chandrayaan 2, Chandrayaan 3, and subsequent moon mission, or lunar missions rather. So this GSLV Mark III will play a crucial role there. And that's what we are talking about, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and we have to reduce our dependence on foreign countries. And that's why, since this rocket is the most powerful rocket rather, which we have designed, that's why it is known as Indian Bahubali. They can even ask you that. Hopefully they will not, but yeah, they can ask you. Now moving on to the core part of this particular article. Like we have talked about in the previous article, patent, trademark. So here the core part is the difference between PSLV and GSLV. This is actually important. So which was launched first? Obviously PSLV, but its capacity was lesser. So 1994, 2014, you don't even need to remember the year, but just remember that PSLV was launched 20 years prior. Then stages, we have just talked about it. In PSLV, you have solid, liquid, 4 stages, propellants. Here you have 3, solid, liquid, and then the cryogenic upper stage. And what is cryogenic? The engine or the fuel which will be working at super low temperature. Payload capacity was 1750, but again, here it varies. Why? And this you have to understand, there are different orbits. Low Earth orbit, which are very closer to Earth. Then you start going up and up and up. So you reach into GTO, geotransfer orbits, right? If I'm not wrong. So here what happens, when you are in the low Earth orbit, PSLV can carry higher payload. but when they are in the GTO, because more fuel will be consumed and there are different other factors involved, so they'll be able to carry 1,425. If you compare it with GSLV-C, 8,000, 4,000. So the capacity is increasing many-fold and it will help us a lot. So that's what they are saying. This again, there is a question here, and this is important from pre-perspective. They can ask you, which of PSLV and GSLV is known as workhorse of ISRO? The answer is PSLV. Why? Because GSLV initially used to fail and we were not very dependent or very confident about GSLV. We are now, but and PSLV's failure rate was very, very low. And we used to have so many successful satellite launch. And that's why PSLV was known as the workhorse of ISRO. So do remember this. Fine. So Chandrayaan-1, MOM, that is Mars Orbiter mission, all these were done using PSLV vehicles. Again, what is the full form of PSLV? Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Chandrayaan-2, Chandrayaan-3 and all the subsequent missions, we are planning to do that via GSLV, which will be much more powerful rocket or launch vehicle rather than, or when we are comparing it with PSLV. Moving on to the fourth article, which is related to GS3 economy. So here, if you see this particular thing, trade deficit with 9 of the top trading partners. In the previous DNA analysis, Prateek sir has talked about deficit per se, where he may have taught you all the fiscal deficit, revenue deficit and all those things which was related to budget. Here we are trying to understand something known as balance of payment, which in simple term is how much we are importing and exporting from the rest of the world. Exporting to, importing from, right? How much we are selling to other countries, how much we are buying from other countries in simple terms. So when you are generally having, this is a general definition, when we are generally having trade deficit, that means we are selling less, we are buying more. This is not a hard and fast rule. This is a general tendency. So we are dependent. If you are having continuous trade deficit with different countries, in general terms, you are or we are dependent more on other countries. And that's why there was a term which was asked by UPSC some years back. What is closed economy? Do understand this. This is already a PYQ. Closed economy. What is the meaning of the term closed economy? A country which does neither import or nor export. That means they are completely self-reliant. That is a closed economy. If somebody asks you what is the example of a closed economy, the answer is no one. No country is exactly closed economy, because some amount of import and export does happen. But there was an example given a few years back that a country which comes very close to being a closed economy is Brazil. Right. So previous year questions on these deficits and everything, they have been asked. So you have to be aware of it and you have to be ready for it. So India has recorded a trade deficit. So we have top 10, like there is a tussle which is going on between China and US. Who is the largest trading partner of India? Sometimes it's US, sometimes it's China. Currently it's China, and US has gone to become the second largest trading partner of ours. So out of the top 10 with 9, we are having trade deficit. In simple terms, that means we are importing more from them rather than exporting. Simple terms, this may or may not be true in most of the cases, or in some of the cases rather, but in simple terms, that is the meaning, right? So now let's talk about this. Again, here, there are certain facts that we are having a trade deficit of around $85 billion, and that has increased from the last year. Russia, we are again having deficit of $57.2 billion. We are dependent on them for so many technologies and different things. Korea, deficit is increasing, $14.71 billion. Hong Kong, deficit has rose to 12.2. But it's not like this is a uniform story, and with all the countries we are having increased trade deficit. We have narrow trade deficit. That means we have reduced trade deficit with some countries like UAE, Saudi Arab, Russia, Indonesia. Again, the point is not this, that you have to remember all the facts per se. You have to understand the trade deficit phenomena here. So generally what happens, there is a balance of payment. In balance of payment, you have two accounts. Let's say current account and capital account. So in current account, there are different classification here. Services, income, transfer, and like trade, export and import. And in capital account, generally you have borrowings, which you are taking from other countries. When, let's say current account, in general, what happens is India has a current account deficit. So if we are going in simple terms, we are importing more than exporting commodities. So to compensate that, because we have to run our economy, and if we go in deficit, what we do, we have a capital account surplus. In general terms, we borrow more because we have to compensate it. We have to make it zero, right? So if you are having current account deficit, then you will be having capital account surplus. You have to borrow. In China, the condition is reversed. They have current account surplus. They have capital account deficit. So these things you have to keep in mind. You don't need to worry too much about other areas. So again, BOP balance of payment, and inside current account you have something known as BOT, balance of trade, where they talk about export and import of commodities. But it's not only export and import of commodities, there is services also involved here. We'll talk about that in detail in some other articles. Here, just remember, India has current account deficit, capital account surplus. China has current account surplus, capital account deficit. Okay, so who are the major trading partners of ours? I have told you that who is the largest trading partner? That keeps on changing. US was our largest trading partner in 2021-22 and 22-23, but now China is currently India's largest trading partner, and we have a trade deficit with them. That means we are generally importing more from them rather than exporting more. Free trade agreement, generally what happens when you have free trade agreement with countries, then in that scenario, possibility increases, the tariff reduces, different kind of barriers reduces. So India has FTAs with 4 of its top trading partners, that is Singapore, UAE, Korea and Indonesia. They can ask you that out of these countries, India has trading or FTA with whom? So do remember it. Then ASEAN bloc, ASEAN countries. So here we are trying to merge, economies merging with IR, international relation. There are 10 main countries in ASEAN, and the mnemonic is BPLTV mimics. Do remember this? BPLTV mimics. Brunei, Philippines, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, Malaysia, Indonesia, Cambodia and Singapore. So BPLTV mimics, remember this? This is the mnemonic for the 10 main countries of ASEAN. Overall trade deficit. So India's trade deficit has narrowed down, which is actually a good thing. So earlier in the previous fiscal year, we were having a deficit of 264 or $265 billion, which has reduced to 238. So this is a good thing, even though we have increased our trade deficit with 9 of the top 10 trading partners. All in all, our trade deficit has reduced. Now here we have just talked about what is current account deficit. Twin deficit is current account deficit which you are having in BOP, then fiscal deficit, which Prateek sir may have told you earlier that we have a budget component where you have revenue deficit, means revenue account, and then the capital account. In revenue account you have like revenue deficit if your revenue expenditure is more than your revenue receipt. So fiscal deficit is what? Fiscal deficit in general terms is borrowing. If you have like add total expenditure, your total receipt, and your total expenditure is more than total receipt, then you have to borrow. The country has to borrow, and that borrowing is fiscal deficit. So if you have both current account deficit and fiscal deficit, so that is the twin deficit scenario which we are talking about here. Implications when you have current account deficit. So this impact, because this shows that we are importing in general terms more than what we are exporting. So people interest may, or the investors interest rather may decrease, and that's what we are seeing. A lower CAD can improve investors' confidence. If we have lower current account deficit, if we are like the deficit reduces rather, then in that scenario what is happening? Our export is increasing or our import is reducing, and that will improve investors' confidence. That will also improve our rupee value. So that is what they are saying. Current account surplus which China has. In most of the cases, China has current account surplus, we have current account deficit. China has capital account deficit, we have capital account surplus. Moving on to the last article of the day. And this article is related to international relation. This article is related to China-Russia relationship and what impact it will have on India. So we have to understand this, right? Because India is a very key partner of Russia. But Russia also wants partnership or strength, or what do you say, closer relationship with China. Because Russia is fighting a war, as we all know. And if China is closer to Russia, China is one of the permanent members of UNSC, Russia's work will become comparatively easier when it comes to tackling USA. So it's a very complicated, very intricate issue which we have to discuss here. And different kind of questions has been asked on these kind of partnerships. So you need to be aware about what is happening here and how India can delicately balance its relationship with Russia, its relationship with US, and reduce the friction which it has with China. So Vladimir Putin, he has visited Beijing, and he has visited Beijing or China, or these leaders, they have visited each other's country a lot in the last 2 decades, in the last 20 years, right? So why Russia wants China? As we have just discussed, both are part of UNSC 5 permanent members, and both need each other to tackle US. So Putin's return to Russia was marked by reassurance that their close ally Xi Jinping would continue to offer unwavering support to Moscow. So this is happening, but India is little concerned. Why? Because if Russia is getting too much closer to China, we know we have certain issues with China. And so we need to be aware about where Russia is at on certain issues which we have with China. So key aspects of the partnership: economic dependence. China is like a lifeline because China is in this Western sanction. You know what has happened with Russia per se. G7 has become G6 now. So Russia is facing so many Western sanctions. In that scenario, China is accounting for roughly 30% of Russia's total global trade. And so, from economic perspective also, Russia cannot live without China per se. So Beijing supplies 70% of Russia's semiconductor and other critical technology, which they will be needing at this particular hour. Key aspects of the partnership: political stability, absence of leadership change. Now, this is again, sometimes when you read about democracy and dictatorship per se, people generally say democracy is good all the time, dictatorship is bad all the time. But again, from UPSC perspective, everything has its pros and cons. Democracy is not always good. Dictatorship is not always bad. You may feel like, sir, what are you saying? But I'm telling you the right thing. Understand this. When you have dictatorship, let's say you have a government for 40 years, then you have continuity in policies and you grow much faster. But when, let's say, you have a democracy, your government changes frequently. That leads to change in policy. You're not developing at that faster pace. And that's what happened with India and China. China had a dictatorship, kind of a dictatorship government, and they developed very fast. In like 1970s, till 1970s, India and China were at the same level. But in the last 40-50 years, China has like increased its pace of development at a much dramatic pace. That is not to say that we need dictatorship in our country. I'm just telling you everything has its pros and cons. So that's what we are talking about here. We have just discussed that Xi Jinping and Putin has met over 40 times in the last 2 decades. 20 years, 40 times. Roughly 2 times they are meeting every year. Defense cooperation, they have a very close bonding, and China, India is very mindful of that, and we are having a close look at what is going on between Russia and China. So what are the challenges in this Russia-China relationship? This is an asymmetric relationship. Russia is more dependent on China as compared to China's dependence on Russia. So that is what is being written in this particular slide, that many people analyze or view Russia as a junior partner to China. But Russia is very big, Russia is very powerful, so Russia does not adhere or agree this particular junior partner concept. Fear of entrapment and abandonment. There is like formal alliance, they both try to avoid it because Beijing does not want to get into Russia's muddle, whatever Russia is doing. So Beijing does not want to be entangled in Russia's conflict with the West, and Moscow is very wary of what China is doing in Taiwan or what China is doing or whatever issues they have with us in the Arunachal Pradesh front and in different areas, right? So both of them are wary of each other, but still they both need each other. So this is actually a very complicated kind of a relationship. The most important part from our IR perspective, what is the implication of whatever is going on between Russia and China for us? So New Delhi is cautious. This is the key word here. India's strategy. We have always followed something known as NAM, non-aligned movement. We have always been like, we are all about, India is all about balancing relationship. So here we have to balance our relationship with US. We have to balance our relationship with Russia. At the same time, we have to keep a close look at India-China relationship as well. But again, the thing is, if Russia becomes more and more aggressive in Ukraine, so this balancing act will become more challenging for us. And that's what this article is saying. India's strong ties with Russia are crucial for its position because, you know, we have discussed this earlier also. If we have not, we are discussing it right now. India-US relationship, many scholars says that it is more transactional in nature. You buy this from us, we'll give this to you. India and Russia, we have been all-weather friend. During the Kargil war, US did not allow us to use their GPS. So we can rely, or in general, what we have learned from history is we can rely more on Russia as compared to US. So there are so many things to consider here when we are talking about these topics per se. Now let's do the prelims practice question. We'll solve 5 prelims practice questions, and after that, we'll have a look at 1 mains question as well. First question for you, and again, I have already told you the drill. What is the drill here? You have to pause me before I tell you the answer. So this is again a big question, a lengthy question, which has been a trend. Like these kind of questions have been asked by UPSC in recent years. So lengthy questions, be ready for that. So Moscow-Beijing partnership. And again, I'm telling you again and again, if the question is of this type, not of only 1 statement, only 2 statements, then always, always, always try for option elimination. Right. So partnership between Russia and China is also driven by economic interests, with China accounting for 30% of Russia's total global trade. We have talked about it. This is a correct statement. So eliminate B. Regular joint military exercise between Russia and China indicate a strong former military alliance. Go back to the article. This is the last article. We have talked about that both of them are very wary of formal military alliance because both of them do not want to get involved in other like messy affairs. China does not want to get involved in Ukraine war directly. Russia does not want to get involved in what China is doing in Taiwan, South China Sea, and other areas. So no, not strong formal military alliance. Second is wrong. If second is wrong, you're directly getting the answer. That is C134. Moscow-Beijing partnership is positioned as second most powerful entity after this relationship between Western countries and US. Russia relies on China for 70% of its semiconductor. These are factual points which we have discussed in the article which we have talked about, the fifth article, right? So the answer is C, as we have just discussed. Let's come to the second question. These are factual questions. If you're getting it wrong, don't worry about it. I will tell you, just like I tell you in other previous DNA articles as well, or videos as well rather, that if there are certain questions which you should not be getting wrong after going through this DNA video. So regarding the implications of Russia-China partnership, and again, use common sense, because sometimes what happens in exam, in pressure cooker like situation, you get little flustered, but always rely on your common sense. So here, try to eliminate option. India's strategy of balancing strong ties with US and maintaining a relationship with Russia has been effective in managing China. Let's say you're getting confused here. So take a pause. The growing Moscow-Beijing partnership makes it easier. Will it make it easier? Again, use common sense. It is making tougher for us, right? Because Beijing, we do not have good relationship with China, to put it very mildly, but we have good relationship with Moscow. So this is complicating thing for us. Second is wrong, eliminate. So now you're left with B and D. You don't need to check 3 now, you just need to check 4. The intensifying Russia-West conflict will it simplify India's geopolitical balancing act? We don't want to make any enemy. We want Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, as our Honorable PM Sir says. We want to balance all the ties. So it is not simplifying, bro. It is complicating matter. That means fourth is wrong, and you're left with only B, 1 and 3. So you can use, sometimes what happens when we see big questions, so many options, we get little flustered. Don't. Just use or do pranayama. Take breathe in, breathe out. That will actually help, and that actually helps a lot, right? So the answer is B. Let's come to the third question. Tricky question, don't worry about it. So a narrowing trade deficit always suggests overall improved export performance relative to imports, right? And again, when you solve UPSC questions, we talk about keywords, we talk about extreme words. That it is written always, so you should be very wary, and your hands here should like straighten up, because you're like, oh my god, always. So it's not like if we are having our trade deficit is narrowing. So it can happen, maybe our export is more, or maybe our import is less. It does not always mean that export is improving as compared to import. So first statement is wrong. If first is wrong, you're directly getting the answer, that is only 2 and 3. Even if you have no idea about 2 and 3, you're still getting this question correct, right? Increasing trade deficit with key trading partners like China and Russia could indicate rising dependency. That is actually true. Trade surplus with countries such as US and European nations reflect a competitive advantage that they are exporting things from us in larger number. So all these are like general statement, but yes, if you had known first, you're able to eliminate the options in a much better manner. If we come to the fourth question with reference to, now this question you should not get it wrong. So they're talking about LVM3, new heavy launch launch vehicle of ISRO for achieving a 4,000 kg spacecraft launching capability to GTO. We have talked about it. Do have a look at the comparative analysis thing. But it is not a 2-stage launch vehicle. We have just talked about that it is a 3-stage launch vehicle, solid, liquid and cryogenic, because this is GSLV. So even when we're doing a comparative analysis of PSLV, we have seen that the second statement is wrong here. GSLV, any GSLV is 3-stage, solid, liquid, cryogenic. Cryogenic, which is working at super low temperature. So second is wrong. You're left with A1 only or D, neither one nor two. First is correct. So the answer is A1 only. Coming to the fifth question, fifth prelims question, and then we'll move on to the means practice question. PM Janman scheme, and we have talked about it. This is targeting PVTGs, and the scheme was launched with the objective. So first statement is correct. Eliminate option, you're left with ABD. Under the housing component PM Janman, each PVTG household is entitled to receive 1.5 lakh. If I remember correctly, it was 2.39 lakhs, 3 installment, not 1.5 lakh, 2 installment. Second is wrong. Eliminate second. So now you're left with A and B. Let's not even see third, because third is anyway correct. Let's go to the fourth one. The local challenges in the implementation scheme, again a general statement, and we have talked about this also, that sensitivity is very much required. So the answer is B, 1, 3 and 4. Now let's come to the means practice question. Critically examine the role of Indian Patent Office in managing intellectual property rights. Here you can talk about what Delhi High Court says, how much pendency we have. There are some corruption issues also. So you can talk about all these things. But this is not all, right? critically examine means you have to also talk about the silver lining. Silver lining means patent filing, etc. has increased. We have talked about the silver lining in the article which we have discussed. But again, that is not all. There is a second part to this. You have to also distinguish between, or you have to also talk about what is patent, what is copyright, what is trademark, what is GI tag, and what are trade secrets. We have talked about them in detail. We have even taken an example for each one of them. So again, this answer should not be tough for you. And believe me, UPSC has already asked a question where they have not asked you to distinguish between all these terms, but 2 or 3 terms they have taken from here and they have asked it in PYQ. So be ready for these terms: patent, copyright, GI tags, trademark, trade secrets. And then you can conclude by recommendation of Economic Advisory Council. What they have said, they have talked about automation, that some of the work can be automated. Whatever is like done by Indian Patent Office, some of the work can be automated, because if automation happens, human interference reduces, corruption will reduce. And that is what second ARC also says. E-governance is a prime example of that. So this part you have to focus more on. You know how you have to write. The intro part, you will talk about Indian Patent Office issues. Body part, you will talk about all these patent, copyright. And in the conclusion part, you will talk about the recommendation of Economic Advisory Council. If you like the video, do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy, and don't forget to comment on our channel. Take care, be blessed, see you soon.